Should we keep calling ourselves wedding vendors? Sometimes when that question comes up, I understand the anxiety behind the term wedding vendor. Now, the idea is if we keep calling ourselves vendors, then we are commoditizing ourselves. Because if you are a service professional, if you are, well, because service professionals are often distinguishable from vendors, it's hard to get a grip on that to understand what that is. But then, if you just for a moment pay attention to how the word is used in movies, for instance, often wedding movies, you'll find that vendors is often used to describe situations where people feel that the product or the service is indistinguishable, and so there's no particular benefit of going with one person over the other. So, like in the movies that are set in New York, if they say get a hot dog vendor or a food vendor, they just mean pretty much anyone will do, any person will do, and so that is the kind of idea that is behind the hesitancy when you run into folks, whether in Abuja or Lagos, who say it's about time we should stop calling ourselves wedding vendors because we are making ourselves commodities, we're making ourselves indistinguishable, and we're making ourselves replaceable. And the idea being that until we start calling ourselves something different or seeing ourselves as something different, perhaps the market and our customers are not going to appreciate that we are, in fact, indeed different, and that if you come to me as a wedding photographer, I'm different from Joe and Kenneth and Mark and Lucy. So we're all different. We're not all just the same thing, and we shouldn't just go with the cheapest price. And it will be the same for those of you who are wedding planners, that if a bride or groom hooks up with you, they should be able to appreciate that you're not the same as Kemi, and that Kemi is not the same as Bingbe, and Bingbe is not the same as Chinenye. That we're all different. So we are not vendors, we are not commodities. And so, to that extent, if you consider that fear, if you consider the anxiety behind it, I guess there's some merit to this whole move of we shouldn't be calling ourselves vendors anymore. Now, in my case, I have always referred to us, for those of us in the wedding space, I've always used the term vendor, but from time to time, I refer to us as wedding industry professionals. Now, the reason why I call us wedding industry professionals is not necessarily because I'm trying to avoid the stigma or the commoditization that is associated with that word vendor, but it's because I'm trying to get all of us thinking about ourselves in a different manner, that we are indeed professionals. Even if we are in an industry that hasn't gone any professionalization, so we don't have certification courses for photographers or wedding planners, we don't have continuing education curriculums for bakers and for MCs and for pyrotechnic people, all these people that do the smoke and fireworks and things like that at the events. So we don't have all those certifications, professional bodies, regulatory agencies and things like that, but still we ought to refer to ourselves as professionals. And the reason why is because those of you who are long-term listeners of the podcast will remember that it's something that I stress often and often again. And if you're a new-time listener, then hear me out clearly on this one. We are all sales professionals. The reason why we are all sales professionals and not photographer, cake artist, wedding planner is because the primary purpose of a business is to create a customer. And those are words of wisdom from Professor Drucker. Some of you might not agree, but hopefully as you listen to the podcast a little bit longer, you'll be able to switch over to my side and see the wisdom behind that idea. So we are primarily salespeople because the whole point of a business is to create a customer. If I don't create a customer, then I am not going to have anyone to exercise my wedding photography skills over. If you don't create a customer, you're not going to have anyone to exercise your wedding planning pizzazz over. You're not going to be able to demonstrate your cake baking wizardry, and you're not going to be able to show your finesse and your crowd control and all that if you're an MC. So our primary purpose is not MCing or wedding photography or wedding planning or cake baking. It's creating a customer. And so because of that, the primary function of a business is marketing and innovation. Now, we already do enough of that innovation bit, so I'm not going to talk about that. But so from what Professor Drucker would have us believe, marketing is one of our primary functions. Now, there's no how that you can conduct yourself efficiently and ethically as a marketer or as a salesperson unless you first of all consider and rejig your mind to realize that you are a professional. It is only when you think of yourself as a marketing professional or as a sales professional that you're going to get into the mind frame of having systematized, repeatable processes that you run through over and over again to find people, to initiate conversations with them, to get them to the sale, to get them to bring their friends, family, and associates, and to get value and also provide value in the relationship over the long term. So that is the reason why I refer to us as wedding industry professionals, not because I'm running away from the term vendor, but because it's absolutely essential to how we conduct ourselves in the sales and in the marketing process. If we don't think of ourselves as professionals in sales and marketing, we will forever limit ourselves to grafting, grinding, looking for tips and tricks and things of that nature. And professionals just don't do that. You don't meet a lawyer who's a professional who is trying to tips and tricks his way into winning the case for you. The same thing with a doctor. The doctor is not tipsing and tricking and hacking or whatever the buzzword is these days. When you meet a professional, doctor, lawyer, accountant, architect, civil engineer, whatever it is, it's the same. They're going about things in a systematic process, running through checklists, trying to decipher what the problem is before coming up with solutions. It's well ordered and systematized. And so that is the main reason why I refer to us as wedding industry professionals. And I think we should continue to call ourselves wedding industry professionals, regardless of whether we get rid of the term vendor and whether we get some professionalization going on in the industry. Because some people will have their way. We should have some certification, professional courses, continuing education, what else, regulatory bodies, fines, watchdogs, stuff like that. Some people would have their way. But until that happens, let's keep referring to ourselves as wedding industry professionals because that is the right and optimum mindset that you need to be able to sell effectively and to be able to market effectively. And that brings me to another point. If we're worried about being commoditized, yes, what we call ourselves is important. If we call ourselves vendors, then maybe perhaps we're still going to be commoditized. But for now, until that day comes, until Uhuru comes and we get a new word for what it is that we're going to call ourselves, if we conduct ourselves in a professional manner, that in itself is going to distinguish you from other people. Because I hear this all the time that, are you sure you're a photographer? You don't behave like one. This is not how photographers behave, blah, 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 blah. So by the very way that I conduct myself, conduct my business, carry on conversations, move things along, stay on the ball, that in itself differentiates me from other photographers. That is apart from style, of course. So style is essential. And by that, I mean style is a matter of how you blend all the different techniques in your discipline to bring about your desired work of art. So style is important as a photographer. How you light, how you compose, how you frame, the level of contrast you use, let's see, what else? Storytelling technique and things of that nature. So style is important. As a cake artist, how much sugar do you use? Are you sugar-based? Are you fondant-based? Are you, all that technical stuff. So it's all important, but you can differentiate yourself by the very way in which you conduct business. And that is one of the main reasons why I make this podcast, because if you have a well thought out, systematized way of going about marketing to and attracting and speaking to our customers and building relationships, it's going to set us apart. Some of you don't agree with it, but if you think about it a little bit, you'll catch where I'm coming from. You realize now, for those of us who are Nigerians in Abuja and Lagos, you realize that in the carpentry industry, There's the regular guy who carries the hammer and the saw, and you call him when you just want him to, I don't know, stick a nail somewhere or hang up a picture frame or something like that. We all know that guy. But in recent years, we also know the other guy, those people who have the fancy website, it looks like they went to school for carpentry and, they have all the pizzazz and the look and, the all whatnot. And those guys you don't just call because you want someone to stick up a frame in your wall. You call them because you want some custom furniture or because you're building a brand new house and you want them to have some custom woodwork and fittings for you and things of that nature. So if you haven't experienced this, because I have, just know that there are other industries that are currently undergoing this shift. So there's no professionalization that is going on in the carpentry space. There's no regulatory body. There's no overarching body that says this is what you call yourself, this is what you should charge, this is how you should dress. But there are those distinctions are currently being made because people are running their carpentry businesses differently. So the guy on the street, they both call themselves the same thing, I guess, carpenters or woodworkers or whatever. But the guy on the street, or rather, the guy who is who has the fancy website and who sounds educated and who has a well thought out sales and marketing process, he's clearly distinguishable from the average guy on the street, and that is kind of the idea that I'm trying to pass along to you guys. So, should they call themselves carpenters or woodworkers or I don't know, whatever term is out there? I guess it's important what it is that you call yourself because, like, these guys in Abuja, I think, is it woodworkers? I can't remember. Is it woodworkers? There's woodworkers, I think, carpentry.ng. And I can't remember. I should have looked it up before making this recording. So it doesn't matter what they call themselves. I guess it does. But the overwhelming differentiation is going to happen based on how they carry out their businesses. And so that is what we should be paying attention to. But of course, yes, in the meantime, if we can find a way to get rid of the word vendor, by all means, let's see what we can do. But just bear in mind that it's okay for us to say we're not vendors anymore. But it'll take a while to educate our brides and grooms and other people, other stakeholders in the wedding industry to start calling us something different. So until that time comes and the name changes, please distinguish yourself by how you run your business processes. You're a wedding industry professional, and so how you sell and market and build relationships and ensure that customers are satisfied and all that good stuff. That is the key thing about how to go about distinguishing yourself from Kemi and Roslyn and Ifediche and any other person who is a wedding planner. And that's how I should be able to distinguish myself from Joe and Kunle and Simi Sola as wedding photographers. So that's how we should distinguish ourselves. So thank you very much for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based event and wedding photographer Tavishima Ayede. Thanks for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next recording. Have a wonderful work week. I didn't record yesterday because it was Sunday and I was recording the other podcast, which is the So You're Getting Married podcast, which focuses on marriage and relationships. And so I'm back and I'm going to be with you guys for another 5 or 6 days until I have to run away and record the other podcast as well. So thanks guys for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next recording.